And welcome back to Project Iowa. Today on the show, we will be taking a look at the Iowa building at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. Stay tuned. And the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri, was held on 1,200 acres of land known as Forest Park. From April 30th, 1904 to December 1st, 1904, roughly 20 million people attended the fair, with upwards of $15 million being spent. The most international World's Fair to date, with 43 of the then 45 United States participating, as well as 60 other countries, including Japan, Brazil, Germany, and the Philippines. However, the Filipino people's involvement in the 1904 fair seems to be a bit of a problem, which we will get into later. Which brings us to Iowa's exhibition at the 1904 fair, the Iowa Building. And we are told as early as January 6, 1899, Governor Leslie Shaw appointed a J.C. Millman to be the chairman as the representative of the state of Iowa at the 1904 fair. So we have meetings in January 1889. Second meeting, we have 1901. The committee is appointed to go to St. Louis and look over the grounds. And then we have here a meeting of the commissioner to consider architects, December 18th, 1902. December 19th, 1902, Proudfoot and Bird were elected architects, and the building committee is created with Commissioners Shepard, Palmer, and Leach. Next date we have here is from a meeting in Des Moines on March 4th, 1903 at 2 p.m. The building contract is approved, with E.W. Nichols and Company winning the bid. So here we are in March 4th, 1903, and they've just worked out who's going to design the building and who's going to construct it. Next date we have is this with a photo, June 19th, 1903. You can see they've got this elaborate wooden frame up. And the next date we have, as far as the progress of this construction goes, August 15th, 1903. Let's see the construction photo here. And the next date, just roughly a week later, August 25th, 1903, we see the building. Very beautiful and very done. So I found this book by a man named Freeman R. Conway, a report of the Iowa Commission to the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, St. Louis, 1904. This book was published in 1906, and I've come to see that it has recently been republished by an independent party, and the state of Iowa has also recently thrown together a little edited pamphlet of it, both in the past year. And now this book goes into great detail on all of these meetings and different committees and commissioners that were appointed throughout the process. They go into great detail over money that was spent, salvage, all kinds of in-depth kind of statistics about this process. And the book also includes what seems to be 3 construction photos from the summer of 1903 when the Iowa building was allegedly constructed. The first one we have, June 19th, 1903. We can see just an elaborate wooden frame. The next date, August 15th, 1903. We can see scaffolding and it appears to be the building materializing by itself through the ether. And then the third one is August 25th, 1903, with the building nearly done. Now, what we have here with these 3 fake construction photos is an attempt to convince people that their narrative is factual. Now, without getting too deep or spending too much time analyzing every little anomaly between every photo, which could be a half-hour analysis in and of itself, I'll just briefly touch upon some of the problems with these photos. And I will remind you that this is absolutely not an isolated incident. If you try to do some looking into the history of a lot of these buildings, documentation, construction photos, if you find any, you will find one with the building finished, and it will be full of just nonsense. So, very quickly, 67 days for a structure made of any material like that is very hard to believe, especially when we don't see any workers in the photos. We don't see materials all over the ground. As well as these photos, did they clean up all the debris and material that was surrounding these sites before the photos? Because anyone who knows anything about construction would know that it gets messy and there will be debris all around these structures before they're finished. Yet in each one of these photos, we don't see materials, we don't see debris, we don't see workers. Now, they say these buildings are made of plaster, and yet we don't see giant vats of plaster at the base of all of these construction sites. We don't see anyone working with plaster at all. So if anyone wants to spend time looking through these photos and listing off all the logical inconsistencies, I highly recommend doing that. One thing I noticed that I will include here from analyzing them is that the shadows in the dome on top of the building are the same in the second and third picture. So even if they took that photo from the exact same spot, the shadows at the exact same time of day, the shadows in that dome would not look the same. The sun's position moves daily throughout the year, so the chances that the shadows going through that dome would be the exact same weeks or a month apart is, scientifically impossible. So we'll leave our analysis of these alleged construction photos here for now. There's a lot to unpack there. To me, these were smoking gun. Usually they just try and cobble together one fake photo, but here they tried to do a series and date them, which to me, in their attempt to be excessive in their detail of this whole process, kind of showed that they never had details when it came to actually proving what they're doing. And another thing to be noted for those of us who prefer our history to be factual is this photo here. And the man there on the left handing that what appears to look like a key to the other man is former governor of Iowa, William Larrabee. And the narrative tells us that Mr. Larrabee was appointed commissioner of the Iowa exhibit at the fair. However, strangely, in this caption, they refer to him as the president. And I think I found another example of the photo manipulation that seems to be so common with state-sponsored history. Here we have this ceremonial passing of the key to the building from former Governor Larrabee to this board of control, a guy named John County. And you can see whoever developed this photo took it upon themselves to either draw in this ceremonial key or edit the outline, draw that white line around the outside, but not just the clear evidence of editing, but it just doesn't seem right the way they're holding it in their hands. And further examination of this photo, we have these men here. The one with the saw and the axe has the title of Superintendent of Destruction. His name is Henry Jones. So I guess they want us to believe that these men here with these tools in their hand took down this building in 4 months. And not only did they dismantle this structure with those tools, they saved every board and every nail. And this book of Mr. Conway's actually documents the sale and transfer of all of these alleged salvaged materials that they were able to reuse from these men taking down this building with those tools. Fascinating. And the United States government kidnapped and trafficked over 1,000 Filipino people from their homes in the Philippines over 8,000 miles to St. Louis to live in a pen like animals, to be tortured on display for the entertainment of the fairgoers. The record also shows that it was not just Filipino people, but indigenous people from other parts of the world that were also kidnapped and brought here and imprisoned to be some kind of sideshow act, again, for apparently the entertainment of the fairgoers. The record also shows that when some of these people passed away, their brains were stolen from them and their family and shipped to anthropologists at different universities across America for scientific research. And it gets worse. At the 1904 fair in St. Louis, they had an incubator baby exhibit with babies for sale. And the record shows that they had a display of 43 infants for sale, and 39 of them died, some of them from being left in the heat. And no, the fair was not immediately shut down. Apparently they got a new man in charge of the display, and the fair kept going. And so, in retrospect, the 1904 World's Fair seems to be some kind of brutal crime spree. And not just on behalf of the United States government, but it seems to have been coordination around the world with these events. And one must begin to ask the question, is this another one of their staged events that are created to make the political wheelings and dealings of our leaders legal and legitimate? However, the kind of humanitarian violations and suffering that was unleashed at this fair, legality, it's beyond whether or not this was legal or not. At this point, we're talking about morals, we're talking about some really unspeakable things. And for this to go on in public for 6 months as some kind of, entertainment, it's appalling, it's disturbing, and it's traumatic. And that's a good, important point that I'd like to make here too, is that while many, many people and animals suffered for this event, it wasn't just the prisoners who were the victims. The attendees of this fair who beheld these events and thought it was okay were also victims. And it kind of drains your heart to look back at these things and just even begin contemplating what happened and if it could ever be made right and how these things could happen. But at the same time, it's better to point out these abuses of power, even if they're 100 years old. And it's better to face these realities and speak of them rather than to pretend they didn't happen or minimize the suffering. So to me, the World's Fairs, and this World Fair in particular, is more or less a brainwashing festival situated within a war crime or a mass indoctrination seminar held in a dungeon. And it gets worse. It isn't just a festival of suffering. They concluded this event with a demolition of history alongside what I call the Great American Construction Scam. So between the state of Iowa and the United States government, the crimes committed at the 1904 World's Fair are shocking.